I'm a nightmare train conductor, and I discovered 5 haunted rules that keep me alive. I never should have opened that door. The chill that cut through that creaking would send tremors down my spine. I stood there, heart racing, breath shallow. It was the sort of dread that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. My everyday life as a train conductor had always been routine: checking tickets, signaling the crew, and ensuring passengers were safe. But that evening, everything darkened. Shadows twisted like whispers in the corners of my consciousness. The train station was eerily quiet, the air heavy with something unspeakable. Classic fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, distorted shadows against the cracked tiled floor. It smelled of dust and rust, a decade's worth of decay. I could hear the distant echo of my footsteps, mingling with the soft ticking of the clock in the waiting room, as if time itself were ticking down to something sinister. Then came the first sound: a clatter. My instinct screamed at me. No one was supposed to be here. I turned and saw a small metal object had rolled away from the bench. But it wasn't just the sound, it was the way it felt. My palms were sweaty, cold sweat trickled down my back, and my gut twisted. I had learned in my years on this job to trust my instincts, but this was a new kind of wrong. Suddenly, the overhead light buzzed louder, pulsing. My heart thudded hard against my ribcage. I glanced around. Shadows shifted, real or imagined, I could not tell anymore. As I stepped toward the door marked OFF limits, I felt something pull, like an invisible thread drawing me in. I knew better. I should have turned back. A low whisper danced around me. "Stay away," it seemed to say. I edged closer, holding my breath. I could feel the cold seep deeper into my bones. An icy shiver danced on my neck. My fingers trembled as I reached for the knob, gripping it tightly, knuckles white. I hesitated. The heaviness of that door pressed against my thoughts. What lay beyond? Curiosity clawed at me as at my death. I turned the handle. It creaked open, revealing darkness so thick it felt like water. My pulse raced 1,000,000 miles per hour. I stepped in. The air was stale, carrying a scent of something bitter, like burnt iron. A flash of movement made my heart skip. I whipped around, eyes wide. Nothing. Just shadows, waiting. As I advanced further into the inky blackness, the sounds morphed. Drip drip, something was there, lurking in the gloom. I felt a presence. I was not alone. A cold breath slid past my ear, lingering. The darkness thickened as if it were alive. I spun again, adrenaline pumping, ready for whatever horror would leap from the void. Then footsteps. Gritty and slow. Panic erupted inside me. They were closing in. I felt a weight press against my chest, suffocating. Was this fear? Or was it something more? My instinct screamed to flee, but what was that figure lurking just behind the shadows? I turned back toward the door, my only hope, and then, it slammed shut with a resounding crash. That's when I heard a low, guttural sound, rising from the shadows. I was trapped. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air grew thick with a suffocating stench that clawed at my throat. The shadows pulsated around me, swaying as if they held a life of their own. The door my only escape stood resolutely shut, as if mocking my helplessness. Behind me, the guttural sound persisted, a visceral rasp that sent an electric jolt of fear coursing through my veins. My heart beat in a frantic rhythm, drowning out all other sound, mixing with the suffocated cries of my conscience. I pressed my back against the door, praying it would hold off whatever loomed in the darkness. "What do you want?" I croaked into the void, my voice hardly a whisper against the overwhelming quietude. No answer came, only the deepened growl, resonating from far beneath the creaky floorboards. A tremor rippled through the ground, reverberating up through my spine. I steadied my breath, rooted in place, each second stretching into eternity. Thoughts raced as I frantically recalled the haunted rules I had been warned of, the ones that kept the living safe from the dead. Don't let them in. Don't engage in their game. But how could I abide by rules when the game itself felt so chaotically real? In the silence, I began to discern movement amidst the shadows, shapes shifting with grotesque fluidity. Out of the dimness, I could make out the outline of something, someone. Eyes glinted back at me, reflecting the flickering lights far above. An echoing sigh resonated in the gloom. "Help us," the voice intoned, dripping with sorrow. Horror washed over me. His was not a plea for aid but rather a summons. My gaze locked onto the pair of eyes, their depth endless, filled with an aching longing that chilled me to the core. I spun around, heart racing, instincts ordering me to flee. But the door felt solid, bound by an unseen force, trapping me in this purgatory. "Stay away," I heard the whisper again, this time louder, sharper. What could possibly stay away from me when I was already lost? The shadows coiling around my feet felt tangible, ready to engulf me whole. I closed my eyes, summoning a flicker of courage. I had to escape. Clenching my fists, I battered against the door, but it offered no give, only a mocking silence, and then came the third sound, a low creak of wood. I froze. The whispers harmonized as if answering a melody only they could hear. They filled the air, a chorus of sorrowful pleas, wailing in despair. Join us, the voices swirled around me, sticky like cobwebs, wrapping tighter around my consciousness. I opened my eyes just as an icy finger brushed against my arm. A gasp erupted from my lips, a shuddering gasp full of dread. In raw instinct, I turned to swipe away the chilling sensation, but my hand met only the expanse of heavy darkness. I could almost feel the presence, its breath mingling with mine, stirring the hairs on the nape of my neck. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice cracking in desperation. "You can't have me. I won't join you." But the shadows only intensified, swirling, hunting. Panic surged as the footsteps grew closer, uneven and deliberate, as if testing the very fabric of my reality, and just like that, the whispers receded, replaced by a low, menacing laugh that pierced through the dark. My resolve shattered. I turned back to the door once again, focusing on the handle. In that split second, it swung open violently, revealing a nightmare beyond comprehension, a corridor that stretched into infinity, walls shifting with unspeakable horrors, each they flickered with grotesque images of despair and torment. With my heart thundering faster than the train I rode, I stumbled forward toward the abyss, and there on the threshold, standing at the very edge of darkness, was a figure, cloaked in despair, holding something between its hands, a bloodied ticket. With twisted lips, it breathed, "All aboard." As the figure lunged at me, shadows crashing against my ankles like rising water, I felt something drag me back, an unseen force. I was caught between two worlds, and the truth I had sought grew darker still. What awaited me now was far more terrifying than I could ever have imagined. The darkness clawed at my skin as I was torn between realms, each inch more suffocating than the last. I gasped for breath, the overwhelming stench of rot invading my senses, mingling with the metallic tang of fear. Every heartbeat was a countdown, every second ticking toward an inevitable end as the specter with the bloodied ticket loomed closer, its ghastly visage morphing in the shadows. "Let go, let go!" I screamed, my voice a frantic echo in the void, but the unseen force gripping me held on with malevolent strength. In the depths of my mind, I could hear the sinister whispers returning, their cadence quickening, an insidious chant that grew in intensity. Join us, the ghastly figure's breath was now hotter, more rancid, as it was nearly upon me. Strands of hair fell from its face, pooling around twisted features that once looked alive. "You're next," it hissed, a voice slick with malice. "We need another passenger." The air trembled with its words, a sick pressure building in my chest. With a sudden flash of defiance, I summoned all of my strength, and with a violent jerk, I yanked myself away from the spectral clawing that gripped my ankles. I stumbled backward, plunging into the corridor which now enveloped me in a bile-colored haze. The thick air pressed against my lungs, and yet I felt a strange sense of liberation taking hold. I spun around to face the figure, my heart thrumming like a drum of war. "Not today," I gasped, the weight of despair lifting ever so slightly as I turned to run. I sprinted down the corridor, desperation fueling my pace. Each step an act of rebellion against the creeping dread that whispered of my impending doom. The walls seemed to close in, stretching behind me like a congealed nightmare, warped faces flickering in and out of focus, mouths agape in silent screams. As I dashed deeper into the corridor, I could hear the relentless footsteps chasing me, a cacophony of disembodied feet echoing, created from a collective of wretched souls craving escape. The darkness thickened, coiling around corners, beckoning me into an abyss where no light could penetrate. I felt a potent terror coursing through my veins, a reality plummeting toward chaos, imploding under an unseen weight. Cursed snapshots of those who had gone before me flashed past, the shards of their lives intertwining like barbed wire. A little girl sitting alone at an empty train station, her eyes wide with fear. A mother wailing over an open grave, surrounded by specters of her lost children. An old man, clutching a rusted pocket watch, his face pallid and twisted with unfulfilled longing. They reached out, pleading for assistance, but I could offer none. My own survival was all I could focus on. Their frozen screams buried themselves deep in my psyche as I pressed onward. Through a haze of panic, I saw a flicker of light ahead, a stark contrast against the black engulfing me. With renewed vigor, I rushed toward it, but something cold brushed my back, fingers like ice tracing along my spine. I knew it was the entity hunting me, its presence stifling any hope of escape. I pushed myself harder, anguish mixing with desperation. Finally breaking through the choking darkness, I stumbled into a realm filled with muted colors until I realized that clarity came at a price. The grotesque details of this place pierced my senses with excruciating clarity. The walls seemed alive, pulsing and weeping with blood and enchanting horror. Metal tracks lay stretched before me, rusty and twisted, a maze formed by the lost souls of the damned. Faded lanterns hung above, sputtering weak, jaundiced light that barely touched the ground. That I had entered the heart of the nightmare, and the horror wasn't over. In the distance, I saw a train, the iron monstrosity silhouetted against the roiling darkness, its windows solid black, like empty eyes searching for their next meal. And then, the cold laughter erupted again. It echoed louder this time, surrounding me, a cacophony of tortured souls urging me inward, into the bowels of despair. Glancing back, I caught a glimpse of the cloaked figure forcing its way through the impenetrable shadows, its bloodied ticket held high as if it were a trophy. "Join us." It howled, voice distorted, filled with malice and craving. It stepped forward, melding with the shadows, tracking my scent, honing in on my fear. I was frozen, caught in the grip of paralyzing dread, with the only option to either board the train of nightmares or to confront whatever lay behind me. The ticket promised finality, but the choice seemed to offer no salvation. As the figure lunged for me, the train's whistle screeched, and with it came a horrifying revelation: the next ticket did not hold a destination but a reckoning. Before I could make my choice, the ground beneath me shifted violently, and I lost my footing, plummeting toward the darkness below. "You can't escape." I thought I heard the spirits scream as I spiraled into the endless void. The train's headlights glared down upon me like the eyes of death itself as I vanished into the unknown, and then came the bone-rattling silence, followed by the relentless sound of a single heartbeat. It wasn't mine. The heartbeat drummed in the stillness, riding the chill that seeped into my bones. It reverberated through the blackness, a haunting echo of time gone wrong. I tried to still my own pulse, to drown out the sinister rhythm surrounding me, but it thrummed with an impatient insistence, like the rising tide of an unholy ocean. I felt it beneath me, a pulse of an entity other than myself, a dark promise of something lurking just beyond my reach. The weight of the void pressed down, heavy and suffocating, coiling around me with almost sentient purpose. Each beat whispered secrets, words of curses long forgotten. I could feel them creeping into my mind, the desperate souls trapped by their own fears and failures, their voices amalgamating into one shrill plea, "Join us." With that haunting whisper still echoing, I felt something shift around me, a thrum of energy coursing through the air. The heartbeat morphed abruptly into a cacophony of voices more tangible, a collective wailing rising like smoke to block out any shred of tranquility. It was then that the world unfurled again, revealing my new surroundings in shards of gray and deep crimson. That I was in a dimly lit train car, its interior worn and covered in the dust of disintegration. The smell of mildew and decay gnawed at my instincts, clawing at what little rationality I still possessed. Flashes of horror pulsed with the dim lights. There they were again, the lost souls. I could see their faces contorted by desperation, reflected in the scratched metal surfaces of forgotten seats. Each one of them seemed to beckon, pointing to something hidden just beyond the reach of my gaze. With every ounce of dread pooled in my stomach, I edged to the narrow aisle, glancing around as I walked. The train rattled softly underfoot, a mournful complaint against its own burden. My eyes darted to the windows, and I caught a glimpse of pulsing shadows racing alongside us, reaching out like skeletal hands, yearning to grasp and pull me into the suffocating terror that lay beyond the glass. That I hesitated, suddenly aware of a presence beside me. It was an apparition draped in a tattered coat, its eyes two black holes staring into the expanse of my very soul. "The rules, you don't know the rules," it rasped, each word slithering from its mouth like serpents. It raised a bony finger to point toward the front of the train. "You'll need them to survive. Who are you?" I choked out, feeling that cold chill race up my spine again. "That I was once a passenger, like you," it croaked. "But I learned too late. The conductor holds all the power here. 5 rules, if followed, may keep your soul intact. Break them and you will join us." Fear lanced through me, reverberating louder than the heartbeat that still clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I could feel the weight of its certainty, the terrible truth hanging in the air thick as fog. "Tell me," I cried, the desperation spilling from my lips like water from a fractured vessel. "First," it began, "never look into the mirrors lining the train. You will see something you were never meant to and lose your mind." I swallowed hard, the image of the hidden mirrors flaring bright in my imagination, each one a portal into madness. "Second, never accept a ticket offered by the unseen. They are not meant for you." I thought of the bloodied ticket, still fresh in my memory, mocking me, and felt a chill wrap around my bones. "Third, never ignore the voices, they are the ones who guide you." Their wailing was louder now, a chorus of despondency snaking around me, pulling at my heart. I didn't want to acknowledge them, but I could feel them clawing for my attention, begging to be understood at a cost. "Fourth, always travel in pairs if you must explore the cars. Alone, you will find only despair." A shudder rippled through me as I realized that I had already broken that rule, for I knew not how many were aboard this cursed train. And finally, it whispered, a raspy breath that turned to ice in my veins, "Never trust the driver. The faces beyond the windows are the souls he has taken. Hell stop at nothing to add you to his collection." The figure began to fade, dissolving into a haze of sorrow that clung to the air like a funeral shroud. "Remember them," it hissed before fading completely, its final words a chill on my skin. "Your ticket is waiting." Panic surged within me, clawing its way to the surface as I stumbled backward, barely regaining my balance. The train lurched, and in that very moment, I felt a shift in the air. The conductor was drawing nearer, presence weighing heavy on my shoulders, reminding me that time was running out. A sudden screech of steel pierced the thick air, the shrill sound of metal grinding on metal consumed me. I turned, heart racing, to see a shadowy figure at the front of the train. The conductor, hidden in darkness, just beyond my reach, standing motionless, ticket in hand. And then, the lights flickered violently, illuminating the countless faces pressed against the windows, a distorted choir of longing and despair. They were reaching for me, eyes wide in an echo of desperation, ghostly fingers stretching, begging for release. The conductor raised the ticket high, its surface glistening, catching and bending the faint light that flickered across the car. "Your turn," it bellowed, voice echoing across the space, distorted as if it came from every direction at once. The choice loomed like the abyss, a choking silence heavy with unspoken fear. As the train lurched violently again and I stumbled, the heartbeat intensified, mixing with the warped laughter of the souls outside, I realized there was nowhere left to hide. And then, with a sudden plunge, the train began to plunge downward. The darkness opened wide ahead, a gaping maw, swallowing all sense of direction. I clung to the last vestiges of my sanity, heart pounding as we descended. What horrors awaited me at the bottom was a fear I couldn't begin to fathom. Join us. The voices screamed, a terrifying chorus harmonizing with the train's decay. And just as I felt myself slipping away, the ground beneath me shattered, and with a jarring crash, I plunged straight into that darkness only to find myself staring into a mirror. My reflection twisted before me, as the eyes staring back were not my own. They were something else entirely. The reflection in the mirror was a maelstrom of fear and horror, a visage wrenched from the depths of my own nightmares. The eyes, dark and infinite, reflected my terror, yet they harbored something else: malice. A cold sweat erupted on my skin as the visage grinned, a smile filled with sharp teeth and shadows deep enough to drown in. "Welcome aboard," the figure slithered through my lips, its voice dripping with malicious glee. The train jerked violently, almost throwing me off balance as I grappled for something solid. The shriek of metal echoed in the air, drowning out the wailing souls outside. They seemed to fade into the background, part of a sinister orchestra composed just for me. "Who are you?" I gasped, though I knew the answer even before I asked it. My question hung heavy in the air, a challenge to that which was not simply my reflection but something more, an echo of what I could become. "I am you," it rasped. "The you that still clings to the light, resisting the darkness. But you're entering my domain now. Your hesitation makes you weak, and weakness is a delicious meal." The face in the mirror leaned forward, an otherworldly fire behind it, and I felt an impulse to step closer, drawn toward the bright abyss of its eyes. "No." I staggered back, repulsed yet intrigued. The other self laughed, a sound low and rumbling that echoed through the hollow car. With an insidious grin, it gestured toward the mirror. "Look again, see what you hide from." The walls around me began to pulse, the colors swirling violently like a storm in a bottle, liquid shadows coiling and unwinding with every beat of that infernal heart. I couldn't help but look again, and as I did, the reflections shifted. Not just my fair skin, but visions bloomed around. Meterable scenes played like phantoms through time. Faces, familiar yet alien, grinned widely, eyes hollow and pleading. I saw them: friends, family, people who had once mattered more than the air I breathed. Corrupted by despair, trapped in this asylum of refuse. "What do you want?" I shouted, voice breaking, but the figure only danced in my stead, relishing in the grotesque tableau laid before me. "Don't you see? This is freedom. Total surrender to the shadows. They offer solace, companionship." The laughter rose, echoing louder than the heartbeat. "You can be part of them, too, simply relinquish your fight. The train will take care of the rest. Just look beyond the surface." Sickened, I reeled toward the door. I had just a moment to escape the nightmare that was opening like a door to hell. But as I turned away, a crack of ice splintered through the air, and the train skidded to a halt. "The rules!" I gasped, remembering the specter's warnings. The memory was a whisper caught in the ghostly winds. I had violated the first one already, and now the flickering lights gave way to darkness, an impenetrable cloak pressing against my skin. "Fool!" The reflection's voice dripped with disdain. "You think you can simply leave? Your mind is now mine to explore, and I will show you horrors that will make you beg for the train's embrace." Panic stormed through me as I felt the walls close in, an unseen pressure bearing down. I was losing control. "No. I have to make it to the front," I screamed, insanity clawing up the base of my throat. But the reflection only laughed, and suddenly, the glass rippled like liquid, pulling me towards it. I struggled, darkness clawing at my limbs, and just when I thought I'd drown within its depths, everything fell silent. The heartbeat ceased, the wailing ceased, even the train's groans fell still, leaving only the oppressive silence of an empty void. I was left hanging, suspended between worlds, drenched in the suffocating blackness, the twisted figure of my own reflection hovering just out of reach, cloaked in shadows. Then a voice broke through the stillness, whispering sweetly, "Do you want to see what awaits you?" Before I could answer, the darkness exploded with light, blinding in its intensity. I was sucked into it, my body feeling heavy, as if each molecule was being drained, my soul slipping through the cracks of reality. As the light faded, I landed, disoriented. I saw a landscape stretching out before me, a twisted version of my very own home, sunken beneath shadows and whispers. And standing at its center, the conductor awaited me, cloaked in darkness, a ticket raised once more, mirroring the train. "Welcome back." It crooned, its smile wider than any human should be able to achieve. In that moment, I understood there was no salvation for me. The end of the line was merely the beginning of a new horror, a circle without end. And as my scream echoed through this new nightmare, the ground trembled beneath my feet, and I realized I was not alone. The other faces, those trapped souls, surged around me, each one reaching out with ghostly fingers, eager to pull me under. The faces clawed at the edges of my mind, their desolate cries merging into a cacophony that reverberated through the air. Their eyes, infinite pools of despair, pierced through the dim light, and their weakened voices called out soft yet overwhelming. "Join us," they whispered, "you've always belonged with us." I stumbled backward, trying to escape their grasp, but the ground surged beneath me like a living thing, drawing me down into its cold embrace. "Please." I shouted, the word escaping my lips like the last gasp of air. Yet the conductor stood unmoved, observing the scene with an eerie satisfaction, as if I were a player within a twisted play. My heart raced in my chest, drums of terror echoing the sinister rhythm of my fate. The attraction of their sadness was intoxicating, each specter wearing a mask of sorrow that felt maddeningly familiar. "Don't waste your breath, they'll only whisper lies," the conductor taunted, its eyes glinting like stars in an abyss. My chest tightened, fighting the urge to listen felt like swimming against a deadly current. "They are no longer the people you loved. They are shadows, remnants of a life you can never reclaim. No. They're not like that. They can't be." I yelled, frantically shaking my head, forcing my mind to remember the warmth of their smiles, the laughter that had once filled our home. I stumbled forward, reaching out toward the nearest figure, a woman whose face blurred in and out like a flickering candle. "Help me," I implored, but she merely smiled with a hollow grin, her lips a grimace of longing and despair. "You can't escape. None of us can." "No." I spun around, panic clawing at my throat. I had to think there was a way out, there had to be. My legs carried me towards the gnarled trees lining the horizon of this shadowy version of home, but the moment I turned my back, I could feel them reaching, stretching out spectral fingers toward me. I sprinted, racing against the darkness that nipped at my heels, and the conductor's laughter dipped and swirled like smoke. "You're running toward your own doom," it called, but I refused to look back. The trees closed in around me, their branches woven like fingers overhead, twisting and gnarled, casting grotesque shadows that writhed at my feet. Memories of childhood, of a simpler time, crashed through my mind as I sprinted past their crude infernal shapes. A flicker of light appeared around a bend, illuminating a twisted path through the trees. Forcing myself onward, I stumbled into the clearing and nearly fell to my knees. The portal glimmered like hope incarnate, pulsating with warmth and wisps of familiar laughter. It was like a sunrise filtering through the night, yet the shadows clung to it, eager to snuff out the light. "Don't you see? They want you to step in, but it's a trap," hissed the conductor's voice, now a distant echo. The shadows shifted, swirling violently closer, and the faces behind me morphed into grim expressions of anguish. "They won't let you go. You're theirs now," I could hear them pleading from behind me, the symphony of despair drawing closer. Memories thrummed through me, moments of joy and security. I felt the panic bubble in my throat, squeezing out my words. "They'll find a way," I whispered fiercely to myself, my heart hammering against the cage of my ribs. The portal beckoned, shimmering like the sunlit waters of my childhood lake. I took one step, then another, determination flooding my veins. But the moment I touched its edge, the light flickered, the warmth plunged into icy fingers that clawed at my arm. I gasped, yanking my hand back as a chorus of anguished howls seized my senses, pulling me toward the maw of despair. Suddenly, from the shadows emerged the reflect Iona, menacing presence in the corner of my vision. It loomed closer, far more corporeal now, spilling malice into the air. Do you think you can simply walk away? You have no idea the lengths to which this train will go to claim you. The conductor grinned wider, the darkness around it thickening, swirling with rage as my reflection echoed from within. I am you, and you are nothing. Without me, with that proclamation, the trees around me began to crumble, turning to dust that whipped violently in the storm of shadows. The brightness of the portal dimmed, a shattered mirror reflecting the horror that surrounded me, a tide of faces surging forth, drawing closer and closer. Help me. I screamed again as they coiled around my ankles, pulling me toward the earth that turned to a churning pit of despair just below. Please. But my words evaporated into the air as I felt my body being torn between shadow and light, and in that moment of frantic struggle, I realized the only thing that would break this cycle, the very thing I most feared, was surrender. And as flashes of despair burst in my mind, I understood with gut-wrenching clarity that the abyss whispered back, "You will never escape the darkness, you will embrace it." But just as I prepared to give in, a mournful wail pierced through the chaos, a sound so familiar, it twisted the knife deeper into my heart. It was the voice of my mother, distorted yet achingly real, a plea reaching across the chasm of shadow and pain. Please don't let them take you. My choice hung suspended in the eye of the storm as I felt the world around me break apart, the very line between life and death teetering like a fragile filament. And then, as if the universe conspired against me, the portal imploded, the blinding light smothered in darkness. Welcome home, the conductor mocked, the despair pooling around me like ink spilling through water, until I realized the truth with a heart-stopping revelation. As they closed in, the faces merged into one, my own. And then everything went black. When the darkness receded, I found myself in a different world, a twisted iteration of my own, rendered in grayscale, a place stripped of warmth and hope. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint echo of my own breath. I stood on a crooked street lined with decrepit houses, their windows gaping like empty mouths. Each house seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows flitting behind the warped glass, waiting that I blinked, forcing my mind to process where I was. The feeling of being a prisoner of this spectral realm weighed heavily like an anchor. The dainty laughter of my mother from moments before now hung in the still air, taunting me, a faded sound reverberating against broken walls. I realized with dawning horror I was back in my hometown, but everything was wrong, yet achingly familiar. The cobblestone path beneath my feet felt viscous, like walking through syrup. I hesitated, glancing around for anything that resembled safety, yet all I could see were the silhouettes of figures stained with anguish standing in the shadows, waiting, no longer merely ghosts of those I loved, but manifestations of the darkest parts of my psyche. Help us, floated a whisper that curled around my ears, summoning long-buried grief. I turned, but the source lay hidden in the darkness, a silhouette woven with sorrow, its features sharp and indiscernible. It let out a dry, phantasmal laugh that sent shivers down my spine. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice quaking not with fear but desperate defiance. "What do you want from me? You've lost so much," the figure breathed, stepping into a shaft of muted light, revealing a face I recognized instantly. It was my father, but his expression was cracked, his eyes fogged with an emptiness that hollowed out his features. "And we have come to take what's yours, what should have been taken long ago. Get away!" I shouted, recoiling as his spectral form began to dissolve into a haze of shadows. Again the laughter echoed around me, a cacophony of lost souls, a haunting symphony meant to draw me deeper into the grasp of despair. Steps echoed suddenly, much louder than my heartbeat, sending my mind racing. They approached, climbing over each other in the darkness, a writhing mass of anguished faces and outstretched hands. "You cannot escape," that I bolted, weaving through the narrow path, forcing myself to breathe, but every breath choked against the heavy, stale air. Shadows swooped low, brushing against my skin as I fled. I could almost feel whispers against my ear, words slithering into my mind and burrowing into my consciousness. "That we are your fears. We are everything you've locked away," they crooned in voices that varied, shifting with my memory as my mother's tone blending into my sister's laughter, distorted, drowning in sorrow. Each breath felt like treachery, each heartbeat hammering with the relentless pulse of their unyielding torment. Ahead, the cracked facade of the old train station loomed, its once vibrant colors faded into dulled shades of gray. Light flickered above the entrance, and instinctively I knew this was the core of it all. I pushed through the doors, the hinges moaning in protest. Inside, the ambience was derelict, dust motes floated like glimmering ghosts in the air, and the scent of rusting iron and decay was suffocating. The platform was empty, save for a single bench obscured in shadows. A depthless sense of dread pulled me deeper, yet something compelled me to approach. As I neared the bench, the air turned cold, and an ethereal passenger sat waiting, slumped forward, cloaked in the torn remnants of a black suit. I reached out, trembling as I caught sight of its face. It was me, but distorted, eyes sunken and staring endlessly into despair, reflecting an existence I feared. "Who are you?" I rasped, stepping back as recognition burned through me. "Your past," it whispered, voice like rustling leaves, "and your future a conduit to the next realm." The figure looked over its shoulder, unearthing the sudden prickling on my skin as if it had seen through time. "You have a choice, you. No. Join us, or continue running." The ground vibrated beneath me, sending vibrations through the shadows rising from the cracks in the tiled floor. "What lies beyond that door?" I demanded, an irrational hope surging within me, a hope for answers and escape. "Only what you fear," the figure replied, a smile twisting its mouth in an expression of twisted glee, "but it is also a place where you can reclaim what you lost." Before I could argue, a low rumble resonated through the station, slowly escalating into a thunderous roar as the platform vibrated violently. My reflection suddenly lunged forward, melding into other phantoms, a mass of despair clawing toward Mephises morphing into twisted mockeries of love and loss. "No! Get away!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face as I stumbled back toward the entrance, panicked breaths escaping in hard gasps. In that moment, the train screeched onto the platform, its shadow draping over me, engulfing everything in dark swirling tendrils. The doors slid open, and I caught a glimpse of a landscape obscured by shadows, where only shrouded figures awaited with their outstretched hands, beckoning for me to join them. With my heart racing, I stood on the precipice, feeling the weight of countless souls, one desperate choice looming, to leap into oblivion or face the horrors waiting inside. As the reflection reached for me with a hand that felt eerily familiar, I knew then how profoundly truth could reverberate in despair. And just before the shadows swallowed my resolve, the train conductor's voice sliced through the clamor, victorious and unwavering, "Too late, it's already too late," and in that moment of realization, the echoes of laughter erupted, and the train roared with a life of its own, its dark engine pulsing like a living heart, echoless in its hunger for souls. The ground crumbled beneath me, and as I fell, the world dissolved into a cacophony of flesh and shadow once more. Darkness enveloped me as I plummeted. I plunged into an abyss that felt eternal, surrounded by the suffocating embrace of shadows wrapped tightly around my body. Panic surged through me like a violent current as I fought against the weightlessness, my limbs flailing in an instinctive attempt to grasp onto something tangible, something real. But reality had slipped away, leaving nothing but an icy void that gnawed at my sanity. Then, as abruptly as it began, I landed with a bone-jarring thud on a cold, hard surface. I lay still for a moment, breathless, limbs aching, my heart racing like a trapped animal. The silence enveloped me, heavy and oppressive, yet it was laced with an anticipation that sent ripples of dread through my core. I was in darkness, but this darkness was different. It felt sentient, aware, as if it pulsed with the memories of others lost like me. That I pushed myself up and examined my surroundings. A dim light flickered in the distance, a far-off beacon amid the black. With every step toward it, the ground felt alive, shifting beneath my feet, each stone like a phantasmagorical gaze imposing its scrutiny upon me. The light grew brighter, morphing into jagged outlines of twisted metal and crumbling stone. As I neared, I realized I was standing inside an ancient subway station, its walls lined with faded murals depicting idyllic scenes, families smiling, couples dancing, and children playing. Their faces, once bursting with life, were now marred with shadows that crawled like living ink across their features, rendering them grotesque. Chilled by the sight, I moved closer to the mural, almost compelled to reach out and touch the cold stone, the longing to connect with what once was clawing at my insides. Without warning, the station suddenly exhaled, the air swirling around me as if alive with whispers. "You've come back, haven't you?" The shadows encircling the station murmured, their voices a tumultuous choir of despair. The whispers became coherent, they spoke my name slowly, each syllable dripped with malice. "Why are you calling me? Who are you?" I stammered, pulling away from their grasp, but the words intertwined with my thoughts, tugging at something deep within me. "Remember your choice, dear one." The choice to forget a figure emerged slender and spectral. It was a woman, a haunting phantom dressed in the rags of lost dreams. I could see remnants of my mother's hair lacing her ethereal form, composing the textures of torment and solace. Her eyes locked onto mine, the depths of her gaze resonating with unspoken regrets. "You abandoned us," she lamented, her voice breaking like brittle glass. "You thought you could escape it all." "Escape what?" I shouted, frustration driving me to the edge of reason. The laughter from earlier encased me anew, swarming through the air, tightening around my throat. As I gasped for breath, I felt the ground quaking once more, the reality of this sight shifting like a mirage, a perpetual lie rooted in memories I wished I could bury. Without warning, the station's lights flickered violently, plunging me into moments of darkness intermingled with strobe flashes of distorted scenes. Each flash illuminated the remnants of souls who had once walked these halls, their faces twisted in agony, mouths widened in screams that echoed as if trapped within the confines of the walls, a prison of shared torment. "Help us," they cried, reaching forward with decayed hands that morphed into twisted claws. The grotesque symphony crescendoed with their desperate wails. "Help us before it takes you, too." I stumbled back, scrabbling against the cold tiles, searching for an exit, my heart pounding as I tore my gaze from the haunted faces, desperate not to succumb to their sadness woven through time. I wasn't just seeing their pain, I could feel it, seeping into my own essence as if branding me. Suddenly, the entire station shuddered violently, the walls closing in around me. I could hear the shrill screech of the train echoing in the tunnel, distant yet approaching, a menace, the darkness thrumming with anticipation. Time swirled around me, blending my grief with every soul that had perished in this hollow shell of torment. "Step forth." The woman beckoned, and in that same moment, the air shifted, charged with an electric tension as the lights flickered one last time before descending into darkness once more. "You have to choose. This way, join us or keep running." In the gloom, I felt the pull of fleshless hands grasping at my ankles, dragging me toward the depths of the shadows as the train screeched closer, its call a symphony of death, interwoven with haunting memories. I struggled against their grip, but they clawed at my mind, rooting into the deepest recesses of forgotten shadows that festered with lost moments I craved to resurrect. Just when I thought I had found my footing, a form loomed next to me, swift and ghostly. It was my own reflection, twisting and screaming with the weight of my past, its visage a cacophony of every fear I had ever known. "You can't escape," it sobbed, an echo of my own despair layering onto the haunting chorus. "You're never truly alone here. You never will be." All at once, the sorrowful presence of my past surged forward, merging with the shadows. A wave of souls rushed toward me, eager to pull me into the abyss. And in the midst of the chaos, the train barreled through the tunnel, its ethereal glow suffusing the darkness, unyielding and hungry. I turned to run, but the ground beneath my feet trembled, collapsing into darkness as I was drawn into the maw of forgotten souls, the walls pulsating with laughter that promised to consume me whole. Then, as the train thundered closer, the very air crackling with its insatiable hunger, a thought struck me with mounting dread. What if I was destined to take their place? What if the train conductor was right, and it was already too late? The walls reverberated with the resonance of the approaching train, its shrieking iron a prelude to the horrors that awaited me. In that fleeting moment of dread, a chilling realization shot through my veins. The faces of the dead were no longer offering desperate pleas for help. Instead, they were grinning, a macabre chorus of distorted joy, welcoming me into their eternal embrace. I stumbled backward, the floor beneath me shifting like the tide, as if my every movement was being monitored by unseen eyes. A potent mixture of desperation and terror surged within me. I couldn't let myself be consumed. I swiveled to the mural, blaring with obscured memories and colossal dread, my heart pounding like a war drum. As I scrutinized the twisted depictions of life long past, I felt their collective gaze bore into my very essence, and somehow, I knew they had witnessed countless others fall victim to this labyrinth of despair. Join us. They howled, their voices merging into a singular, shrill scream that resonated within the marrow of my bones, evoking echoes of loss that poured forth from every shadowy crevice. You cannot resist. You belong to the darkness now, but as the train grew louder, its stark lights flashing, illuminating the grotesque dance of shadows, I could feel the beat of an urgency rising within me, a primal urge to escape whatever fate was being woven for me amidst these wretched souls. I turned to flee, sprinting toward the mouth of the tunnel from which I had emerged. The instant I broke into a run, the world exploded into chaos. The platform rippled, the murals peeled from the walls like the shedding skin of a serpent. Faces swirled madly, merging and splitting as if the shadows sought to unravel my very identity. I leapt over the gaping maw of a decaying platform, my limbs moving with a frantic urgency, a desperate need to distance myself from their giddy despair. As I dashed toward the flickering light ahead, the train's whistle blew sharp and piercing, vibrating the very essence of the location. I could feel a palpable energy crackle in the air that was both repulsive and intoxicating, feeding off my fear. My thoughts crashed over one another like waves, taunting me with memories that weren't even mine. Names, faces, and lives lost wove intricate tapestries of suffering that engulfed me whole. Just as I reached what I thought was salvation, a dark corridor that led to an indistinct exit, a shadow blocked my path. It was the spectral woman again, her form flickering like a candle in the wind, her expression a haunting mixture of grief and longing. You cannot run from yourself, she whispered, her voice resonating with a chilling familiarity. Her eyes glimmered with an eerie light, reflecting every tainted thought buried in my mind. You can't escape your destiny, destiny. This was never my choice. I shouted, the last vestiges of my sanity fraying at the seams. I pressed against the unseen weight of her presence, hoping to push through the wall she had formed. But as I moved closer, I found myself slipping, the very shadows at my feet inching upward like oblivious vines determined to ensnare me. From behind the echoes of the tunnel, the train thundered forward, a blur of rust and darkness racing toward me like an oncoming storm. I could hear it clang against the tracks, the thunderous noise swelling into a terrifying crescendo, drowning out every protest, every plea. The woman raised a translucent hand, her fingers extended toward the approach, as if to signal the train to halt. Once it takes you, there's no returning, no salvation. You'll become one of us, she declared with an ethereal resolve that twisted my heart. With no other choice, I darted to my left, searching for an alternative path. Right then, the ground beneath me cracked open, revealing a pit so deep that I could not see its bottom. The darkness that spilled from it whispered my name, a grotesque chant mixed with despair and longing. In an instant, the shadows swarmed around me, each tendril grasping and pulling at my psyche, attempting to drag me toward the abyss. I was suspended in this collision of light, dark, and to me a melody of lost cries, aching for my surrender, and then, as I fought against the tide, the bark of laughter erupted from the darkness surrounding me. But this was different, a fierce, guttural sound, like a beast thirsting for my soul. I whipped around, my eyes darting toward the glowing tracks, and in that moment, the train surged forward, its ghostly form almost palpable. I screamed, desperately clawing at the ground beneath me, aware with sickening clarity that whatever I would encounter next would redefine the very last flicker of hope lingering within my soul. Warmth pulsed, and I could feel the heat radiating from where I had once sought solace now seeping nearer. Then I heard the conductor's voice cutting through the cacophony, a command like a death knell, all aboard. Your choice is made, alive or damned. Just as my fingers slipped from the ledge, tipping into the waiting maw of darkness, the kaleidoscope of faces morphed into one clear image, a child's innocent smile, the outline of my sister's laugh echoing endlessly in my mind. In an instant, I weighed my chance, and as the gears of fate twisted, I screamed into the inky void. But would anyone heed my desperate call, or was my fate already sealed in the shadow of the train, thundering relentlessly toward me? The moment the abyss enveloped me, I was swallowed whole, and time ceased to matter. When I finally emerged, I was no longer in the subway station nor in any familiar landscape. Instead, I found myself upon a train, its interior illuminated by flickering lights that cast crazed shadows against the walls. The carriages rattled violently, yet the sound of wheels grinding over tracks was conspicuously absent. I was surrounded by a writhing mass, an assembly of lost souls molded together in eternal torment, their faces contorted and gaping, begging for release. I staggered backward, dread pooling in my stomach like poison. "Welcome back." A spine-chilling voice echoed a voice I recognized all too well. It was the conductor, a figure cloaked in obscurity and malevolence, standing rigid, ticket raised like a totem, beaming with sickly glee. "You're no longer a passenger," he said, voice pulsating with excitement. "You're a part of this train now." Panic surged through me as I turned to flee, but the very walls of the car shrank around me, tightening into a claustrophobic embrace. I felt their despair seep into my soul, the souls I had tried to rescue, now encased in the visage of unending sorrow. I was caught, trapped within the very vessel of horror I had tried to escape. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of realization. "Not what I want, but what you fear." The conductor moved closer, shadows swirling like a storm around him. With a wicked gesture, he directed my gaze toward the windows, where tormented faces pressed against the glass from the other side, lost souls trapped in a cycle of despair that seemed all too familiar. "These are the passengers waiting to find rest, each with stories left untold. And they believe you can save them." My heart thudded in my chest, remembering the warnings, the tales of dark entities drawn to the vulnerable, the rules I had learned but never truly believed. The train's sinister rhythm thrummed beneath me, an echo of my deepest insecurities. Looking away from the chilling faces, I felt a compulsion to scream, to break free from the despair surrounding me, but my voice was swallowed by the cacophony of their desperate cries. They reached out with skeletal fingers, attempting to pull me into their agony, their torment becoming a tangible force that felt like chains wrapped around my mind. "No!" I yelled, choking on the weight of their sorrow. "I won't become one of you." But with each declaration of defiance, the shadows deepened, and the conductor only smiled wider. "Do you not see?" He crooned softly, twisting my name into a melody. "You are already one of them. Your fight merely makes you more delicious. Your soul is a feast, wrapped in a human guise." As if responding to his words, the shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness drawing me closer to the glass. I struggled against their grip, but they were relentless, whispering my fears into my ears, replaying echoes of battles lost long ago, moments of hesitation, times when I had abandoned my loved ones, choices I regretted. The faces from the windows morphed, and I saw the two faces I feared most, my mother, estranged and sorrowful, and my sister, adorned in the innocence I could never protect. "No. I won't lose you again." I screamed, desperation flooding my veins as I fought against the pull of those unholy conglomerations. But it felt like fighting a tide. Despair seeped into the cracks of my mind, threatening to unravel everything. The conductor's laugh warred with the cacophony, an agonizing melody that fused with the cries of the lost. "Look closely at what you have become," he implored, extending his arm, urging me to gaze once more at the windowsa horizon where longing turned to madness. I turned to see my own face mirrored in the glass, a shadow of myself, distorted and hollow, a reflection of every choice leading to my undoing. My body grew cold as the realization hit me. I was encased in the darkness, not just a passenger but an architect of this nightmare. "It's already too late," I murmured, shattering under the weight of truth. As the familiar past filled my mind, the choices I had made echoed in the silence. I had become the harbinger of my own torment. With a final glint of defiance resonating inside me, I centered all my thoughts on the truth. The lost moments weren't just voices of despair. They were echoes of my own memories, the voices screaming for acknowledgement. I had to break the cycle. No. I shouted, more for myself than anyone else. I choose to remember, and just like that, something within me flickered. The souls surrounding me jolted back, the incessant whispers losing their grip as clarity washed over me. The air thickened with a different kind of inertia, hope that whispered against the shadows that sought to drown me. "You don't control me," I cried, and every ounce of strength surged into my words, but in response, the conductor roared, "You think you can defeat the darkness? You're trapped in its very soul. You. Before he could finish, the ground trembled violently beneath us, swaying like a ship in stormy seas. The souls screeched as the safety of the train fight to implode. I pressed my hands against the windows, feeling the eyes of the damned bore deep into the corners of my mind, searching, longing for my will to falter. A power rose within me, a fire ignited by the memory of those I loved. I want join you. I bellowed, my voice ricocheting off the walls. With every ounce of emotion, I forced the darkness to retreat, and as I screamed again, a blinding light exploded through the air, a pulse brighter than madness. The windows shattered as light poured into the void, dispersing shadows like smoke whipped away by the winds. I felt an unshackling me essence pulled from the train, flying past the conductor, who shrieked in unadulterated fury. In that moment, I saw them, the faces of my family staring back, solid as the light surrounding me. Together, I whispered, and with a final surge of will, I lunged forward, grabbing their outstretched hands. The torrent of shadows faltered, collapsing inward upon itself as I blasted free from the constricting grip of the train and the wretched sanctuary of the lost. The conductor's screams faded, blending with the wails of the damned, but as my family and I broke free, I felt the weight of the other souls pull me back, but I held tight, hearts entwined like threads spun from gold, the power of connection enveloping us as we broke away from the darkness, and for just a fleeting moment, I made my choice. I embraced the light, yet, as we emerged into ethereal whispers, I understood the truth. The darkness would linger behind me, waiting for a moment of weakness to cling back and claim its due. There was no escaping that haunting last echo in my mind, a reminder, as haunting as it was liberating: you can never walk away. And even as I pulled my loved ones into daylight, the train roared even louder, somewhere in the distance, its hunger still very much alive. I knew then that while I had escaped the nightmare, the wheels of horror kept turning, ready to welcome another lost soul into its embrace. The last remnants of the conductor's laughter faded as I took a step forward, knowing that with every step, I was never truly free, only tethered ever closer to the shadows that lingered, hungering for their due.